And good day, and thank you for joining us for our Viking Coaches Show. We're here with the Lady Vikings head coach Allison Phillips, as well as senior guard Addison Herbert, here to recap some of the Lady Vikings action here from the past week or so, week and a half, if you will. And Coach, first of all, a couple of all three games this past week and a half have been huge. Really, some of the most intense competition y'all have had, with Mountain Heritage at home, of course, being able to break a streak with them, and then going to Hendersonville last Friday, and then hosting Polk on Tuesday. And I know just before we came on, you'd mentioned kind of the roller coaster ride that your team has been on. Let's talk a little bit, just that win with Mountain Heritage. Just how much of a high was that? How much of a lift was that for y'all?
I don't know if it was as much of a high as it was a relief.
Okay.
You know, in a lot of ways, because we knew, I felt like we had felt like for the past 2 years that we could play with them and we could compete with them. And I think, last year just having to play them 4 times and it's always a big game. You know what I mean? There's a lot of respect there. We were very similar. I don't think it's any secret that I really have a good relationship with Coach Shelton, and she's been a good mentor to me. But at the end of the day, you want to beat those people who kind of teach you how to do things the right way.
Sure.
And she represents everything that I grew up in culture-wise with basketball. So I just have the most respect for her and how hard her girls play. And so I think for us, kind of always feeling like the underdog against them was always kind of the case, but we've really known that we could play with them for the past 2 years. We've really felt confident in our scout that we could beat them. Right. But, we knew that things had to go a certain way, and we had to play our best basketball. And I think last week we were so disappointed with the game not getting to be played on the normal day.
Right.
Because we were there, we were fixing to tip with JV girls, and then they came in and shut everything down because of the water.
Right,
so, we're going, what the heck? I don't know that I've ever seen my girls that frustrated or that disappointed in not getting to play a game, because they were so ready. And I think that just speaks to them and their level of confidence. So when we went home after having a makeshift practice, and just going right back over our scout, continuing to shoot, I felt really good because I just knew how ready they were. When kids want to play that bad, that just tells you as a coach, they're prepared, and they feel good about it. So going into that game, I felt really good. I felt very confident, but you always have that, thought in the back of your mind, well, what if things happen the way they have in the past? We've had 15, 20-point leads on them, and then they've come back.
Right.
But I felt like the girls just really, there was a different vibe, a different aura, with our team, and they just put their foot on the gas, and they never took their foot off. And they were the more physical team, which we knew we had to be in order to win, and that was a big difference maker for us.
Of course, Addison, you've played Mountain Heritage how many times? 4 last season. This one was 5. Sophomore year, a couple at least, probably 3, I'm guessing.
Yep,
so you've seen Mountain Heritage a ton. As a player, how satisfying is it to be able to finally get across that hurdle and be like, look, we have a good chance to beat this team? And what made this team and this game different than maybe some of the others you played?
I don't know. I feel like I've always thought that we could beat them the past few years, but it's just been our mentality going into the games have been definitely different this year. We all just had good feeling about it and wanted to get it over with. And I just think that overall we were the more physical team, and we knew that this year, and we didn't let them push us around at all, and we kind of controlled the game completely. So.
Yeah, 51-34 win. It was, and it was closer than that. Of course, there's a 1-point game at halftime, and then really in the second half was where you all really took over in that matchup. I know, big games. Of course, Marley gave you 14. Of course, Caroline with a big game was 17. Hallie had 9 in that matchup as well. Just good balanced scoring. It didn't seem like it was just one player that was really dominating that matchup. And again, of course, you mentioned in the last coaches show about the players that they had. Of course, Callie Capps being one you needed to kind of keep an eye out on. I know she had 14 in that matchup, but other than that, no player had more than 7.
Yeah.
So can you speak about your defense and just kind of how well they played in that game?
I feel like the first half, our offense wasn't as efficient as we normally would be, and I think we definitely saw that kind of carry over into Hendersonville. But honestly, I feel really great about our defense because that's what we hang our hat on. We've talked about that a lot. Our defense travels, defense is consistent. Even when our shots aren't falling, we can always play good defense.
Yep.
And Addison is the primary leader of that. She always gets the hardest opponent. The other team's best player, that's who she has to guard. And so I think she set the tone for us, just like Maddie did last year. She's just kind of taken over that role for us. And I mean, ultimately, we know that defense is something that we can be really good at every single night, regardless
Sure.
of whether we're hitting shots. We knew that they were going to be able to contain some things, but I felt really good about how we were on the boards. I mean, I felt like we were able to out-rebound them. We were more aggressive. We were, taking good shots. I felt like our offense was efficient, and that if in the second half we could just knock down a few shots, we would be okay. And then we came out, ran a really good set. The first possession, Hallie got a 3, and after that, I personally felt really good. Just knowing that, once we got a good lead, we could hold on to it.
Yeah, it was exciting to see you defeat a Heritage team by 17. Like I said, it's been a number of years since we got a win against them. I want to say it's 2012 or
2011.
something. 11 or 12, yeah, 2011. A long way away. So to get a win is a big deal. And, of course, you'll be seeing them again. They'll give you their best, of course, down in Burnsville as well, and likely always Western Islands Conference tournament, just about clockwork, unless some other teams throw a kink into that, which we'll talk about now with Hendersonville on Friday. That matchup, I just kind of want to get your take on what kind of went wrong there, because it seemed early on they did a little bit of it, like y'all were in it close, first quarter for the most part, but it just seemed like offensively I don't know if it was the spark or if it was just a poor shooting night. They have a talented team as well. I don't want to take anything away from Hendersonville. I think they're the best Hendersonville team that I've seen in the time that I've been covering athletics for the high school. Can you speak just a little bit about what problems you all experienced down there at Hendersonville? And not solely officiating. I'm not going to go into that because we don't want to go there, but just overall, just upon your team's performance, just what they did.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it was a disappointing game. Like, we knew emotionally that it was going to be hard to play them back-to-back with Heritage just because of coming off of the high of such a big win, But at the end of the day, we just didn't play well. Like, we didn't shoot well. We were 1 for 18, I think, in the first half in terms of, like, twos. We were 0 for threes. We only got to the free throw line a few times. I think for the game, we were 13% in the first half, 25% in the second half. So whatever the math is on that, below 20%.
Under 20, yeah.
Like, that's pretty atypical for us. So ultimately, it's a hard gym to shoot in. You play there as a player. It's a challenging environment. And they were very effective in their defense. I felt like they extended that 1-2-2, and we just never really got in the flow. Not having Addison Dellinger was a huge kind of hardship for us, just in the way that she is a very good leader. She's very vocal. She's very active. It's very hard to replace everything that she does, and we had some other players step up. Tilly had a great offensive night. I told Tilly, I said, if you can shoot in Hendersonville as well as you did in that gym, you can shoot anywhere, and she can. She's a great shooter. Thankfully, she came in and had some big shots for us, but no one else could really get anything going. I think Hallie was held scoreless. Caroline had 1 point. And we just, we've got to be able to score points. Defensively, I don't feel like we played that bad of a basketball game. It felt like it in the moment because we were getting beat. But, holding them, which is a very good team, but, I think they're 13-2 on the season, or 13-1 at that time. Holding them to 45 points was not bad, but you've got to be able to score. And our goal every night is to score 60. And when you only come up with 34 points, we can't win like that, So, one of those losses that you go back to the drawing board and you say, okay, like, if this many things go wrong in a game, we're in foul trouble. Addison fouled out. Addison never fouls out. Caroline fouled out. Rarely does Caroline foul out. We're usually able to play through foul trouble. We just weren't that night. Just not our best effort, but a lot of good things that we can take away from that film and get a lot better at.
Addison, what was the attitude of the players in the locker room after that game? I know the coach was, and what I want to use, kind of frustrated. There's some frustration there, I'm sure. But as players, how do you respond when you have an outing like that, where it just doesn't seem like a lot is going right for you, and they're just not able to, really get over whatever that hurdle might be when you're out there on the floor?
Yeah, I think that we were just frustrated too, and we were just kind of confused because we've never not been able to score before or get to the free throw line or anything like that, and that's what gives us all our momentum. That's where our steals usually come from, because our defense gets better after that. But I don't know. I think we're all just really frustrated and kind of just confused about the game. But I think it's changed after Polk. Kind of forgot about it. But
last year, y'all had a similar game with Mitchell, down at Mitchell, where just nothing seemed to go right.
Yep.
But after that matchup, it seemed like y'all went on a little bit of a tear after that. And we see the game with Polk County Tuesday night, kind of indicative of that. You got off to such a strong start. You grabbed an early lead. Caroline was shooting really well in that first quarter, knocked down a couple of shots. Marley knocked down a couple of shots, and both those ladies having strong games. You had three players, of course, four in double figures, led by Marley with 20. But again, you had Addison back as well for that, as Dellinger, I should say. Sorry, it's two Addisons. Sorry, Dellinger back for that matchup, and it seemed like you all were able to also contain Bailey Staten. I know she's probably the leading scorer in the conference and had 30-point, 40-point games, and you held her to 21, but you held her just to 5 in the first half.
Yeah.
When you all were able to build your lead of 42-7, just a 24-4 run for the second quarter was amazing. And what do you contribute to that? And kind of what did you see that pleased you that you didn't see in Hendersonville?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, there are games as a coach where you pray to get to halftime, and that was Hendersonville. And then there are games as a coach where you pray for halftime not to come because you just want to keep playing.
Yeah.
If we could have stayed on the court the whole time, I would have been good with that. Because I told the girls yesterday, I said, I think we could have beat them by 80 if we could have just kept going. You ultimately, again, our defense really wasn't that bad at Hendersonville. We just couldn't score. We knew we needed to come out and have a strong offensive performance. The matchup with Polk is different in terms of personnel. Addison did an amazing job. Like I said, her primary job was to stop Bailey, and she did an awesome job in that. She was so active. Probably one of the best defensive performances individually that I've seen, but everybody did a really good job of helping on her.
Yeah.
And she knows that. She has a lot of trust in her teammates, and we've tried to build that up over the years because ultimately Bailey's a great player and one person can't just stop Bailey. It's got to be a whole team effort. What we feel like we have an advantage on Polk is we are a whole team. So if somebody does shut down one of our players, we have an entire bench and 4 other players on the court at all times that can take over that scoring, So it's a blessing to have that, and it makes you feel good as a coach to know that, okay, if Marley gets shut down, then somebody else can score. But it was also one of those situations where I felt like we just felt a lot more confident, being back at home when those first early shots went in. I think it just exploded our confidence. And they shot really well yesterday in practice, and hopefully that'll just continue. Shooting to me, and I had a conversation with Hallie about this, the difference in a lot of the players on our team and Bailey is Bailey gets to take probably 80% of the shots on her team.
Yeah.
If I gave any one of my starters and probably 4 or 5 people into my bench the opportunity to be that player for a team, they could also do that. They could also score 30 a game. And, and granted, nothing away from her. She's an amazing player, and she's worked very hard. But we just believe in team basketball and, using each other and being able to not be one-dimensional,
Right.
And I think Addison just did a great job on keeping her contained. And that's what we said before the game. We don't need to hold her scoreless. That's not the goal. If she scores, a 3 here or a couple shots here, that's great. But nothing needs to come easy. And I feel like even the shots she got in the second half, kudos to her for hitting it because most people couldn't have.
Yeah, when you come in, back to that third quarter of that game Tuesday, they made a little run. Of course, it seemed like they made some adjustments to try to spring Bailey a little bit more.
Yeah.
But, and she's able to get, it looks like about 11 points in that third quarter. Yeah. And they cut the lead down from 25 to 14 at the end of 3 quarters. Was there any concern on your end at that point to say, okay, we need to do something? And then you come in the fourth quarter, and it seemed like you had Yanni step up in the fourth quarter, knocking down like 4 shots to really kind of help to continue that, keep that lead bolstered. Did you have any concern coming out for that second half to say, they're going to come make a run at us?
Yeah.
We've got to be ready to withstand that.
And we talked about that at halftime. That was one of the things we said at halftime is we know they're going to make a run. Great players don't just go away, and I think we've played enough great players to know that, like, when you hold someone in the first half well below their half average, like, they're going to come out and play uber hard, and we knew that they had to do certain things in order to try to get back in the game. So we were prepared. We talked about what if they press us. We talked about what if this happens. And I think the refs kind of, they officiated based on the score a little bit, and we got some interesting calls, and they got some interesting calls, and things like that are going to happen. That's basketball. No one likes to see a blowout, so we knew that those things were kind of going to be evened up in the
Rein
third
things
quarter.
in a little bit, yeah.
But I felt like we did a really good job of when we needed a bucket, we were able to go get a bucket, and it wasn't them just holding us scoreless. And that's a kudos to them in being able to keep their head and keep composure and play with a lead like that, And then it was a great job of Yanni coming in and being able to finish some things once we were able to spread them out and just kind of put her on an island individually and be able to score on their post players. So
I know she got more time because of Addison being out against Hendersonville. Do you feel like that may have helped her individually in that matchup with Polk being able to see some extended minutes with all the players on the floor that night?
I mean, ultimately, you're talking about a kid who is come into a completely different system, a completely different school, a completely different environment, and we're expecting her, because she is a senior, just to come in and deliver, and that's unrealistic for anyone. I think the more time she spends with the girls, the more time she spends in our system, she's going to get better. But like I said, like a number of people could do that on our team.
Yeah.
So, we're never going to be totally focused on just one person coming and doing, everything. Like, it's always going to be the whole team's got to put forth a certain level of energy and effort. And I thought Kylie did a good job coming in and playing on Bailey some. Callie Ray did a good job. Caroline and Hallie, when they got switched on her, did a great job of containing her. So it was a full team effort led by Addison for sure.
Yeah, and Addison, I wanted to ask you about the communication on the floor. When you have a player of Staten's caliber, I know y'all switched on screens constantly, was making switches. How important is communicating on the floor with your teammates? Say, okay, to switch and be able not to have that player lost in the sauce, so to speak, and get an open look. How hard is that?
It was a little hard, but I don't know. It kind of comes easy. We practiced it a bunch. No practice before that, but I think it was harder in the first quarter when we was pressing because I was on the complete opposite side as her. But Caroline and Hallie did a really good job picking her up and staying with her, and I just got one other man. So.
Okay. And also, I know you've been dealing with some injuries in the past in your career. I know you've dealt with some foot and other issues and injuries, and now you're pretty much back to close to 100%, I'm thinking. Can you talk a little bit just about how that process has been for you and how it's helped you to mature as a player, dealing with the injuries and trying to overcome those?
I feel like it just makes you more grateful to play in general because, like, you never want to be out for anything. And I think my sophomore year was, like, the worst because I was sat for, like, 3 months.
Three very long months.
And that was just really bad. But I don't know. It just makes you more grateful to play in general. And it must, like, makes you want to give your all no matter what. And I don't know. I'm just super thankful that I'm not dealing with anything right now. And
Are you excited about? Of course, you can't look ahead to the playoffs just yet, but hopefully when things go well, you'll be able to make that. I guess it's 2A playoffs now. I guess with the classifications, but I know you weren't able to play in the Mountain Heritage game, that third round game last year, right? You had to sit out due to injury. How hungry does that make you to say, hey, I want to be around? I want, especially here on my senior year, I want to be there and be contributing to the success of this team.
I don't know. Last year that was super difficult because we played them multiple times.
Yeah.
So I was like, we knew so much about the team, and I felt like we were more prepared to play them. And then I couldn't play because during the Polk game, I got hurt. But I just really wanted to play that last game with Maddie, especially, and just the team that we had during that time. But I don't know. I'm super excited to see them again if we do see them in the conference tournament or whatever.
Yeah, we'll say you'll see them again here in a couple of weeks, I guess. You get to go down there to, which I think is one of the hardest places to play and win in Burnsville. It's been a house of horrors for many years.
But I tell them all the time, I feel as comfortable playing there or coaching there as anywhere. Like, I would 1,000 times rather play at Heritage than I would Madison or Hendersonville or anywhere like that.
Right.
And the conference tournament's at Madison this year, and I'm fine with that. But like, environment wise, it doesn't get a whole lot better than getting to play in a big game in Burnsville, and that's fun as a coach. It's fun as a player. It was fun as a player,
Right.
And I think, heck, we've played there so much. We've played them so many times. It's like a second home, kind of. So.
And it's a little different than playing in Ledger over at Mitchell. That's always kind of like a Hatfield-McCoy type thing. You've got a lot of familiarity, and I want to talk about that as well now as we move to this evening's game as we're recording this against the Mitchell Lady Mountaineers. A lot of familiarity, of course, former player and assistant who's coaching there with Hannah, and just Can you speak a little bit about what you're seeing about Mitchell, and what do you expect them to kind of bring to the table here tonight in y'all's matchup with them?
Yeah. Hannah's a great coach, and she's going to do a great job with this group. I know that they're young. I think they got a freshman point guard and a couple freshmen playing on varsity. Predominantly, they are, a very young team. And we were there a couple years ago. I mean, Addison had to play minutes for freshman year on varsity, so did Hallie. It's fun when you have a group of really young kids because there's a lot for the future, and you can think about a whole lot and get excited. But it can also be very frustrating, teaching them. The jump from middle school to varsity is huge. Physically, emotionally, the length of the season, the toll on your body, and mentally what all you're trying to take in. Scouts for every single team. In middle school, you don't scout people, you scout people to a certain extent, but it's not the same level of how much time we spend scouting people. I mean, I feel like sometimes I know more about Mountain Heritage kids than I do ours at certain points of the year. So it's just a lot to take on, and I think they're going to give us a great game. I think that we, as the older, more mature team, need to handle our business well tonight. And that's kind of what we've been preaching this week is take care of business. You know what to do. But don't ever take anyone for granted. And I can promise you, I will never take a Mitchell team for granted. They've taken us to the wire for the past couple years up here at home. And we're going to come out very prepared and very ready to, play our best basketball, hopefully tonight.
I'm going to say the difference, between seeing a team come out like y'all did on Tuesday versus what you did the previous Friday. I mean, Heritage was a big win, big high, big summit, and you had kind of a valley.
Yeah.
Another summit beating a previously, unbeaten Polk team, that was ranked like third in the state, and then now you've got Mitchell. So how to keep that mentality sharp, I guess.
We've talked a lot in practice about being consistent, throughout the year, and I felt like there was a stretch right before Christmas where we got really consistent and we were kind of playing at a high level, especially going into I think it was North Henderson, Irwin, Watauga, all those games. The goal right now is to get to that level of consistency and not drop back off. Thank God we don't have another big break. There's not a big holiday or whatever. So this is when you play your best basketball, and we've got to be peaking at the right time.
Keep the snow away, right?
Yeah.
There you go. You want to keep playing consistently. That helps.
Jamie, I learned a long time ago to not worry about things that I couldn't control.
Right.
And these girls do a great job. We had a snow day practice yesterday. They were all there. They're willing to put in that level of work, and they're so dedicated. It makes it really easy, even when you do have a massive schedule change, that they're willing to come no matter what, and we're fortunate that we were able to practice and have a good practice, and I think that just helps make us feel even better, more confident going into today.
Addison, looking at this matchup with Mitchell, how as a player, do you get up for a game like Mitchell because they are a border rival and you have history, of course, with Coach Hannah and with some of the girls there? I'm sure you faced them in middle school and other times in your career. Is it any different than any other game? Do you treat it like any other game, or how do you go into a game like that as a player, getting ready for a team like the Lady Mountaineers?
I feel like we all still see Mitchell as our rival, even if they're not as good necessarily as they were last year. But I think we have enough confidence going into the game. But like Coach A said, we just can't get big-headed and just play differently because of that. But I think we all have a good mindset going into it.
Okay, awesome. Again, next week you'll have matchups, I guess, with Madison and Owen. Is that correct?
Yep.
You get to go to Madison, so you get a chance to get a preview of the court down there, I guess, which, again, in the middle of nowhere. I say it's where all communication goes to die, just about at Madison. You can't get anything out of there hardly. As far as no newspaper, it's a desert. It really is. So usually that's one of those games I usually try to go to because I know I won't get any other information outside from you all. I'm like, And then you have Owen, of course, coming up here, and both those teams. Again, I want to talk about the JVs just a minute because I know Mitchell doesn't have a JV girls team. Polk didn't have a JV girls team. And Coach Lyons and, of course, Coach Stein's just trying to keep those girls sharp. How difficult is that right now to keep them playing, keep them sharp, knowing that their games are kind of few and far between, it seems?
And it stinks. I played my freshman year on JV. Addison played her freshman year and won a conference championship on JV. I think all of us understand how important it is. and we want them to get to play, and it just stinks. I mean, like, Austin and I had a conversation yesterday. If we don't do something to help our conference have JV girls basketball teams, our conference is not going to be as elite as it has been in the future. You just can't. You cannot withstand success when you're having to constantly bring kids from middle school to varsity. There has to be that year or even that little bit of time where they're able to get used to being in high school, to get used to the length of the season, the just everything about it, how you operate as a varsity basketball player. When I played, we never brought people to varsity. Like, as a freshman, you had to be absolutely filthy to go to varsity, just because there were 20 other girls in front of you, and there were sophomores, and to be brought up as a sophomore was a really big deal. I don't like the climate of just taking freshmen and having to put them on varsity. I had to do that with Hallie. I had to do that with Caroline. Addison, fifth quarter and played some minutes her freshman year. It's not ideal. If everybody could have a true full JV season, I think that that's the best case scenario for you to have long-term success. I hope that, I know Owens they don't seem to want one. I think Mitchell will go back. I know Hannah will she understands the importance of that, and I think Mitchell will eventually have one again. I know Susie will always have a JV team. But we need Polk and Hendersonville and Madison to get back on board and have JV programs. It's important, and those girls deserve to get to play. It stinks for them to have a 2-week gap, and we've got to do better.
It seems like, is that something maybe you look at if this continues to maybe say, okay, now since we're not having these conference games, we need to kind of seek some non-conference competition, maybe from, say, Tennessee or other conferences, Wilkes County down that way, or just try to find some other.
I think it goes back to the importance of keeping the fifth quarter rule, first of all, because that has been huge. Addison was a benefactor of that. Kylie, Kez, all of them got to fifth quarter. That was really cool for them to be able to practice with both. That helped us tremendously early on with these young groups in terms of numbers. I think it changes your dynamic in being able to give a kid 4 JV quarters, and then if you need them in a varsity game, they can come in and play a quarter, or however you want to split that. I think it's critical, and I don't want the state to ever go away from that again. Tennessee's been doing it for forever. They get 6 quarters a night. They always have JV teams. There's something that corresponds well there, and we need to get our heads out of our butts and just do that. Like, it's easy to do. It's not that complicated. I don't understand why we act like it's an act of Congress to have to do. But
even if you have 6 or 7, on a team, if you don't have to have 11 on a field at one time. It seems like there's just a lesser number that you can pull that off. Even if a JV team has 6, I think we've seen that before. We've had teams with just very few players.
I've had 6 JV girls who were awesome, and some of my best teams had 6 or 7 players on them as a JV coach. So it's something we have to keep around if we ever want to be able to compete in the state level. You whatever happens in our conference happens, but if you want to go and have a good run in the playoffs, you got to have a full program, and you got to have JV, and our middle schools have got to be able to funnel kids into that. And we've got to get that situation more even and figured out, and I think it's going to get better in the next year.
Definitely hope for the best for that, for sure. Addison, last question I'll pose to you. As a player, what are your goals for the rest of this season? And individually, what do you want to do the rest of the season as a player on the floor? And then what do you feel are the goals for your team as you come to the second half of the conference season coming up into the postseason?
I think goals winning-wise is just I don't really want to lose another game conference-wise, I guess. And I don't really think we have room to. But individual, I guess when we face the teams that the defensive side of the game is really important, I just want to be able to do my part in that again, especially with Polk and Heritage and Hendersonville. And I think our team goals is basically the same, pretty much the same, and just being consistent. Like I said, we don't have room to mess up again, and I don't think we will, and that's not the place we're going, but I think that's pretty much it. That's
interesting feeling that, when you let a game slip like what happened with Hendersonville, it's not just you lost that game, but you open a door a little bit for other teams. Polk, I'm sure, was thrilled to see that. Of course, Susie and Heritage, I'm sure, were thrilled to see that. But because Pope beat Heritage, so they've got actually multiple losses, so in conference. But again, looking forward, I think tonight, big game for y'all against Mitchell, and then of course next week with Madison, and we'll come back and discuss, I guess on Tuesday, we'll talk about the game with Madison, and we'll preview those two matchups. But ladies, thank you for the time, and we want to thank our folks. I know I haven't mentioned any of our sponsors, which is really odd for me at this point. But Big Mike's Coffee Shop, here at the venue where we record our coaches shows each week. We appreciate Mike and Jackie Nelson. We appreciate their partnership with us, not only during the basketball, but also during our football season as well. We appreciate Kenny Johnson's Entertainment Group and Staging. If you have staging needs, you putting on a concert, doing an event, and you need that done, Kenny's your guy. He knows what he's doing. He and his staff, the group that he has, they're able to set up, take down, everything in between. If you have needs, they can certainly assist you with that and assist you with coaching if you need that too. I know he's a long-time coach. He'll help you coach too. If you need some girls coached up, he'll do that too. So we appreciate Kenny, of course, and his contributions to making these programs happen. So until we come back next week, again, Avery Mitchell at Viking Gym this evening. JV boys here on this Friday start at 4:30. Varsity girls to follow, followed by the varsity boys. Hope we'll see you there at Big Red Country. Until then, so long for now.